What's going on, you guys? You're tuned into the Cutting Room Knife Review. I'm your host, Garrett, and today we have a really special episode for you. Today, we're taking a deep dive and taking a look at the Spyderco Manix 2 series. Now, if I was to ask you, what is your favorite Spyderco model? I would bet that a lot of you would answer me the Manix 2. What's up, guys? I'm Garrett. You're tuned in to the Cutting Room Knife Review, where I review knives, blades, and all things sharp. Please like and subscribe so I can keep bringing you more killer knife content. The Manix 2 is one of the most popular and influential models that Spyderco has ever released. It is one of their most identifiable models. It is one of their most recognizable models. It is a favorite of many. It's a great first introduction to Spyderco for many people. It's a great knife that really every knife collector should have in their collection. So today we're going to take a look at the three different versions of the Manix 2 that are available, what makes them similar and what's different about them. So let's take a look first at what each model of Spyderco Manix 2 is. So the first model of Spyderco Manix 2 that we're going to look at is the Manix 2 Lightweight. And the Manix 2 Lightweight is known by having FRN scales and no liner. It is much lighter than the other two models, as its name would imply. And it is a great entry-level knife for many Spyderco enthusiasts or many knife enthusiasts. You get started with this knife. In fact, this was the first knife that I ever bought that was a nice knife. The first ever high-end knife I ever bought was a Manix 2 Lightweight in S110V steel. Now, the Manix 2 Lightweight that I have today for us is in CPM 15V steel, a much different steel, but awesome nonetheless. 15V is a great tool steel. It's incredibly durable, keeps its edge amazingly long. I really enjoy this knife. I've been looking forward to owning this knife for a long time. I just love the 15V sprint run of this knife. I will be putting on aluminum scales to this knife in the future because the FRN scales aren't for me, but that doesn't mean that it's not for you. Especially if you're looking for a lightweight knife, this is a great choice. Now, the regular Spyderco Manix 2 is this. And this one in particular is the CPM Crewwear version. So the regular Manix 2 has a skeletonized liner, and it either has G10 or micarta scales. Now, the Crewwear steel knives that are released from the Golden, Colorado factory by Spyderco, it's called the Crewcarta series, and that's kind of a mix of the word Crewwear and micarta. And they all have Crewwear steel, and they all have the same natural micarta scales on them. And I absolutely love these scales. Now, as you can see, it looks a little dirty because micarta absorbs the oils from your skin and dirt, and it gets its own patina or just marks on it as you use it. And everybody's scales wind up looking a little bit different, and it kind of gives everybody's knife its own little story. So even though it looks dirty, that's really just kind of a badge of honor with your micarta. And unless it gets, you can clean the micarta, but unless it gets really gunky, I kind of just like letting it do what it does. And so this CPM Crewwear is another tool steel. It's an absolutely amazing steel. It's probably my favorite that's not a sprint run by Spyderco. It's my favorite that's regularly released by them. I absolutely love Crewwear. It's incredibly tough. You can put an edge on it really easy. It's just a great all-around steel. Now, finally, the third model of Manix 2 we have is the Manix 2 XL. And this is the most different from the other two. These are basically the same with the exception of the liner and the scale materials. But this knife is actually not just a carbon copy and bigger. It has some very not so subtle differences. But on this knife, we have it in G10 liners. And we have the steel is CPM Spy 27, which is a crucible steel that was made exclusively for Spyderco. You could compare it kind of to S30V. It's not the best steel at any one thing, but it's a really nice steel in pretty much everything. It's a good jack of all trades steel. So now that we've gone through the three different models of the Spyderco Manix 2, let's take a look at the specification and materials that goes into each of these models. So we're going to start off today by taking a look at the Manix 2 lightweight. Now the Manix 2 was originally introduced in 2005, but the Manix 2 that we know really today with the ball bearing lock was introduced in 2010. So the Manix 2 overall length is going to be 8 inches overall. It has a closed length of 4.66 inches, and it has a blade length of 3.37 inches with an edge length of 2.88 inches. Okay, so now the blade thickness on the Manix 2 is going to be 0.125 inches. So it's really right in the middle of everything. It's not the thinnest blade. It's not the thickest either. It's a really, really nice, just in between thickness to this big flat grind leaf sheet blade. And one of the things I will note about these two knives is essentially they are the same in size. The overall length of the knife, the blade length, all of that. You're going to find that the Manix 2 with the liners is a little bit thicker, but not really, than the FRN version. And its real difference is going to be in the weight. Now, the weight of the lightweight model is 2.9 ounces. The weight of the regular Manix 2 model is 4.9 ounces. So we have 2 ounces less by taking away the liners and using FRN as the scale material. So the real big difference to this Spyderco series of knives than other Spyderco knives is we have this ball bearing locking system, which is actually more akin to something like a Benchmade, which I know is blasphemy to all of our Spyderco fans here. But it's a really good, strong locking system, and it is different than the Benchmade Axis locking system. It is it basically operates the same, but it's a little bit different in here. It has a ball bearing that is pushed up into the tang of the blade, holds it in place. We have a spring back here on this little tab. We pull the tab back, the ball bearing releases, and the blade is released. It has some amazing action to it. It has a really nice detent, a really snappy flick, and a really strong lockup. This is a great pocket knife. The Manix 2 being 8 inches seems like it's a long knife, but it really isn't. This is a very medium-sized knife. This is one of those knives that I kind of consider to be like the perfect pocket knife. There's not much to this knife that I don't enjoy. We have a very, very comfortable grip on this, both held back and choked up into this blade choil. It has one of the nicest handle to blade choils of any knife. Has some really, really nice jimping on the back of the blade. Has nice jimping on the choil of the blade. We have jimping on the liners. We have jimping down here on the liners. We have jimping up here on the liners. It is just a grippy knife. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's very easy to access the lock. We pull it back here. The blade falls shut. Our fingers are kept out of the blade path. Wonderful. It is very easy to do a reverse flick. It is very easy to do a thumb roll. Everything kind of just fits with this knife. It kind of just melts into my hand. I know I say that with a lot of knives, but here's the thing, guys. I only review knives that I like. So far, you've just been seeing knives really that I like. There haven't been too many that I've brought across the table that weren't just already in my collection. So a lot of what you see me reviewing is stuff that I enjoy. But this knife truly has some amazing ergonomics to it. A lot of people, a lot of Spyderco fans will prefer this knife over, say, the Paramilitary 2 or the Para 3. This is just a happy medium for so many Spyderco users, and this is kind of one of those one and done knives. You can get almost any job done with a Manix. This leaf-shaped blade is really strong. It's nice and thick. It's very slicey. It can get incredibly sharp. Has a nice ability to pierce. As you can see on this knife has been through war with me, and so I actually dinged up the tip on this one. But if we want to look at this knife, it comes down to an absolutely piercing point, incredibly sharp, and it's just a joy to hold this knife. When I first picked up this knife, it was one of those like, oh, that's the one. I didn't need to see other knives. That's the one. This knife feels right. Not only does it feel right, I think it looks cool. I think this is just a cool looking Spyderco. Has like about the perfect shape to a leaf blade. It's not too stubby. It's not too chonky. It's kind of right in the middle. Now, I do have one complaint about the Spyderco Manix 2. And it's the same complaint that pretty much everybody has. The blade is incredibly tall. The knife is incredibly tall. The way it sits together is like this width right here is like about 2 inches, and that's just super wide. It eats up so much space of your pockets. It really, like, if you compare it to something like a Para 3, which eats up a lot of space in your pockets, the Para 3 kind of like sticks out that far, but it's a very small little part of the knife. Many knives do not take up this much space in your pocket, along with the fact that it takes up a lot of space in your pocket. When you have those skeletonized liner models, this can really eat up your pants material. This knife can just kind of chew your pocket up. That's really the only bad thing about this knife that I found. The rest of this, I really just enjoy this knife. It's incredibly well balanced. Both the lightweight and the regular model both feel very well balanced in my hands. I'm able to pinch grip it. I'm able to hold it choked up. I'm able to hold it held back. And this knife kind of just does what it needs to do. The effective length of this knife being 2.8 inches effective length of the blade, having a little bit over 3 inches of a blade, exactly about 8 inches of a pocket knife. It is right in that medium happy territory of just like, it's very comfortable for me to everyday carry the Manix 2. This is an incredibly popular everyday carry for so many people, and for good reason. It just works. It fits. It's just a great knife. Now, the old Manix 2 lightweights did not have removable hardware. They actually had, they didn't have screws here. They were riveted together, and you couldn't take them apart. It was like this on both sides, and you kind of had to drill them apart if you wanted to take apart the old Manix 2 lightweight, which I thought was a terrible design flaw. And I would bring that up, except they don't make them like that anymore, which, thank heavens, they don't. Now, if you get the regular scaled versions, we just have, I think it's a T8 screw that takes this knife apart, and yeah, you can take the scales off, replace them with whatever you want to replace them with. The one thing I will say is, if you are changing the liners, you are changing the scales, and you have a Crucarda version, this is a full liner. They come all the way out. the liners are different on the Crucarda version than they are on the G10 version. I don't believe they're skeletonized. I believe that they're solid liners. I mean, there's nothing cut out in the middle, so they don't fit the same scales. If you say you wanted to get applied weapons technology scale, the Crucarda versions don't work, whereas the G10 versions will. Also, one of the things I will say is that if you want to get a very good deal on a knife, you like the Manix 2 blade, go get the lightweight version of this knife and then throw on new liners. Applied Weapons Technology makes a great linerless scale for it. I think I just said liners instead of scales. Go get yourself new scales for the lightweight version. You can end up spending a little bit more than you would on a G10 version of a Spyderco Manix 2 and wind up with aluminum scales and just such a better knife. Such an amazingly durable, lightweight, awesome knife. And that's what I intend to do with this knife right after this episode. But I wanted to keep these scales on this episode just so I could show you guys what stock was. All right, so let's compare the Spyderco Manix 2 to some typical Spyderco knives. We are going to compare it to the Spyderco Para 3 and compare it to the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. As you can see, it's much bigger than the Para 3, and it is fairly even with the Paramilitary 2. There is a big debate between Spyderco fanatics as to which is the better carry, the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 or Spyderco Manix 2. And as you can see, there's a little bit difference in the shapes, a little bit difference in the blade geometry, but really very similarly sized knives, very similarly sized carries. As you can see, I absolutely love Crucarda. Both my Manix and my Paramilitary 2 are in Crucarda. And that's a hard one. I don't know which one I would choose over the other. I used to say Paramilitary 2 all day, and these days think I'm leaning more towards Manix. I think it's just a little bit more robust of a knife. I think that the blade being a little bit thicker, it's just a little bit beefier for me, and I really just like the ergonomics on it. It's just grown on me over the years. It was my first one that I had, and for the longest time, I swore off the Manix 2 for the Paramilitary 2, but I think it was because I was comparing Manix 2 lightweight to a Paramilitary 2, which of course had either G10 or Crucarda scales on it, which is always just going to be a step up as far as ergonomics and aesthetics go. Now we can compare it to one more of the larger size Spyderco knives, and this is comparing it to the Bodacious. And as you can see, the Bodacious is a little bit bigger than it, but you're going to get almost like close to the same amount of knife in this Manix 2. Now the blade, you don't get quite as much blade, but this is really just a little tiny bit that it has on over the Manix 2. There really isn't a whole lot of more blade that you're getting out of this Bodacious, which is considered like, a bigger knife. And it just goes to show that this medium-sized knife can really hang with big knives. I really think that you're not going to be gaining a whole bunch by making a jump up to the Bodacious from the Manix 2. This Manix 2 can really hold its own ground. And if you were going to make a jump up from the Manix 2 to a bigger knife, I think you should move up to the Manix 2 XL. So on that note, let's check out the Manix 2 XL. All right, guys, so now we're taking a look at the Manix 2 XL, which is actually a bit different of a knife than the Manix 2 or the Manix 2 lightweight. The Manix 2 and the Manix 2 lightweight are essentially the same knives with just different scales on them. One has liners, one doesn't, different scale materials, but the blade's exactly the same. The action and the feel of the knife, the ergonomics of the knife are pretty much exactly the same. This knife is not just the Manix 2 increased to 125%. It wasn't just, copied, pasted, and stretched out. It's a different knife. And so when we take a look at the Manix 2 XL, what we find that we have is an 8.94 inch overall knife. This is a huge knife, you guys. It's 8.94 inches. The closed length or the handle length is 5.09 inches. The blade length is 3.85 inches. I used to think it was over 4 inches, but I guess it's not. It's 3.85 inches with a 3.36 inch edge length. So the edge length of this knife is the blade length of the Manix 2. Now the blade thickness on the Manix 2 XL is exactly the same as the Manix 2. It's 0.125. We also have a ball bearing lock, and we have, I think it weighs 5.2 ounces, you guys. Sorry, I had to look that up for a second. I drew a blank. The Manix 2 XL weighs 5.2 ounces, which isn't really a huge jump up from the 4.9 ounces of the Manix 2. This is a gigantic knife that really doesn't feel like, it's not heavy. It doesn't feel as huge as it really is, but this is a lot of blade out in front of us. This knife carries absolutely enormous in the pocket. It is big. But, if you're looking for a big folder, this is a good one. It too this one has skeletonized lining in it. And so I know that I think I might have said they all have skeletonized lining in them. They don't. The ones that have G10 scales have skeletonized lining. The Krukarda versions have full liners. So if you look on the inside of this, I'm not sure that I can show it to you. There's holes in the liner, which make it a little bit lighter. But it does have a full liner. It does have the jimping all along the liner, just like the Manix 2 does. We have jimping up here on the heel of the knife, and we have jimping here in the choil of the knife. Really nice and grippy. Once again, we can hold it back here on the scales, and we can choke up on the knife very comfortably as well. Now, let's get into some of the differences. While we do have the same locking system, and we do have a lot of the same handle textures, etc. Both our handle shape and our blade shape are going to become different with the Manix 2 XL. We have basically a drop point now in the shape. It's not really as much of a leaf shape anymore on this knife. We have the belly is down here on the knife, and we kind of just have a drop point here. It's not so much of just a straight up even point where it's a leaf. Also, on the Manix 2 XL, we have this kind of tail that wraps around our hand, and it kind of hugs my pinky finger down here. This reminds me a lot of the Demco 8020. The scale of the Manix 2 XL is a lot like the Demco 8020, and this knife itself is actually a lot like the Demco 8020. It has kind of a similar feel in my hands to it as far as the grip goes. It has the same super smooth action that the Manix 2 does. All the Manix models run on phosphor bronze washers, like most Spyderco. It has the same ball bearing lock. Incredibly nice action on it. The Manix 2 is just known for having great action, great feel to it. This knife is just big and burly, though. It will eat up so much of your pocket. But it almost reminds me of a knife that I would take outdoors with me. It reminds me of like a folder that I could replace a fixed blade with. Something that I would take with me camping. Something where I need a bigger knife. Not really like... I almost want to say you could do bushcraft with this knife, but I don't really think that you should be doing bushcraft with this knife. But if there was a Spyderco to do that with, that's a folder, it's going to be this one. And you look at what's considered big Spydercos, like the Bodacious, and this thing kind of dwarfs the Bodacious. The Bodacious is supposed to be a pretty big blade. The Manix 2 XL is a big blade. The only real folder knife that really comes like out as big as this knife is, you could get to like the Stretch 2 XL the police model, or the military 2. But none of those are going to have the thickness of the blade of this. This is just like the biggest, chonkiest Spyderco there is. It's bigger than the Shaman, bigger than the Bodacious. When we take out and put the military 2 or the paramilitary 2 next to it, it just dwarfs the paramilitary 2. When we put out the para 3 next to it, it looks silly. It just looks silly big. But I love it. It's a really cool knife. I don't find myself using the Manix 2 XL all that much, but when I do want a really big knife, it's there for me, and it's always going to be there for me. I really like this knife. I think it's really comfortable as far as a big knife goes. But as we can see, it is quite a bit larger than our Manix 2. So out of these knives, which one am I going to go for? Which knife am I going to carry most of the time? Which knife is the one for me? Well, to tell you the truth, the one that I've used the most is just the regular Manix 2. The regular Manix 2 is the one that I would go for the most. The Manix 2 XL is just too big for me to carry as far as everyday carry goes. Now, if I have the use for the bigger knife, if I want to carry a bigger knife, this is the one I'm going for. But both of these knives are still the size that we're going to be able to carry them and be really comfortable carrying them and be really comfortable taking on whatever tasks we need to take on. Now, one thing I do love doing is taking these Spyderco lightweight knives that are linerless and replacing them with applied weapon technology scales that are built to be aluminum scales that replace the scales like this that don't have a liner, and they're built to not have a liner, but it keeps them rigid, keeps them really strong. It's a huge upgrade in both ergonomics, fit and finish, appearance to these FRN scales, and even action. It just seems that the knives run better with them, and it's going to cost you about $100 for the scales, maybe $89 for the scales, but you're going to find that you're going to have about a $40 to $60 difference between your Manix 2 lightweight and your regular Manix 2, depending on the differences in steels, because different sprint runs, different models of steel cost different amounts from Spyderco. And you're going to spend a little bit more money on the aluminum scales, but you're going to have a nicer knife when you're done with this, and a lighter knife than you will with this. So it's a give and take, but it's the give and take that I like to do. As far as my take on these three knives, that's what I'm choosing to do. And this is going to soon be my favorite knife once I have upgraded the scales on it. So as far as, the Manix 2 goes in the big scheme of Spyderco, I think it's one of the coolest designs that they've came out with. It's one of the most unique designs they've came out with. It is just completely distinguished itself as different. It looks different than any other Spyderco. It feels different than any other Spyderco. It has this very well-known locking mechanism. If you see a Spyderco with a ball bearing lock, you think Manix 2. If you see this blade, you think Manix 2. You see these liners with this, with this jimping on it right here, you think Manix 2. It is an icon. It's pretty much turned itself into every bit of the icon that the paramilitary 2 is. It's every bit of the icon that the para 3 is. These are amazing knives, and they've been around for the better part of 20 years for a reason. It's because they still sell because they're good knives. They are great knives for the price, and you are going to be hard-pressed to find really better knives for the price. You're looking at about anywhere from $150 to $170 for the Manix 2 lightweight. You might be able to find it cheaper some other places. You might cost more for a very unique sprint run. I think that I think that with this 15V, which is a more expensive steel from Spyderco, we're sitting around, $169. The Manix 2, we're getting up, but you can get cheaper models that get down into, the 100. I want to say you can get down to like the 130 range for like the very inexpensive models or steels of the lightweights. Now, the Manix 2, the regular range is going to get you in around, you're going to start around the $169 mark, I believe, and carry yourself up into the $200 range. And then the Manix 2 XL is going to usually be up above $200. But when you think about pocket knives and the quality of knives that you're getting out of these Spydercos, the fit and finish of the scales isn't always as nice as some titanium scaled knives. You can pay a lot more for a knife, but as far as a hard use knife goes, as far as a worker knife goes, you're not going to find a better knife than these. You're not going to find a knife that cuts better than these. You're not going to find a knife that you can take to the job site that's going to, you can rely on better than a Spyderco Manix 2. Like, there's really not. You're talking fixed blades at that point, and you're doing work that, you shouldn't be using a folder for anyway. But as far as folders go, this is an amazing folder. It is one of those knives that you can just beat the crap out of, and it's going to keep on going. It's amazing that you have so many options of different steels for these knives. I can't tell you how many sprint runs of different Manixes they've done, but you can have everything in a Manix from S30V and Spy 27 as far as the base steels kind of go. I think there's a BDN1 is another model that Spyderco uses of steel, and then you can get up into the Crucardas. You can get into the 15Vs. I know that there's a Magna Cut if you want to go with the Salt series. There is all kinds of steels that you can get the Manix 2 in, and that's one of the coolest parts about Spyderco is their heat treatment's good, their steels are good, and you have all these options of different steels in the same model, so you can find this knife and find the steel that works for you. So if you haven't checked out the Manix 2 yet, what are you doing? This is a knife that you probably should have in your collection. This is a knife that if you haven't checked out, you need to go check out. They're really not that expensive, and I think that every collector should have at least one of these two knives in their collection. And if you're into big knives, this is definitely a knife to pick up and have in your collection. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. So I'm looking forward to building this knife up. It's been really fun talking about one of the classic knives that Spyderco has released with you guys. It's kind of a trip down memory lane for me, being that my very first knife that was ever a nice knife was Spyderco Manix 2 lightweight. They're just awesome. Really good knives. I don't think anybody can argue with that. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with, you guys. Go check out this awesome knife that's just been a staple in the knife community. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. If you do have one, let me know which one you have. Go down in the comments. Let me know which Manix 2 is your favorite. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear why. Let's talk about it, guys. So this has been the Cutting Room Knife Review. This is the Manix 2 from Spyderco. I'm your host, Garrett. Until next time, you guys, stay sharp.